On today's NFL Spotlight, we're going to go through 5 teams in the NFL who I think have the deepest rosters here as free agency and the draft are all over. Taking a look at those rosters, NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Wednesday, May 7th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. A bit of a quiet Tuesday around the NFL. We're going to continue to go around the NFL and talk about some of the teams over here now that the bulk of the rosters are set. Obviously, there's still more moves to come whenever it is, whether it's trades or a free agent signing. But for the most part, the bulk of rosters are in place. Today on NFL Spotlight, let's talk about which teams are the deepest ones. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? It's great to see you. Love the new background there with the iPad.
Yeah,
NFL Spotlight logo looks good. How's everything going?
good. You got a little MLB update. I just realized that I set it up so the screen wouldn't go dark, but didn't turn off notifications. So hopefully no one sends me anything offensive while we're recording. So with that being said, let's talk about this time the deepest teams in the NFL. It was something, that we've discussed, a lot of times we talk about what is the most important thing to these NFL rosters. And a lot of times it's one, the ability to stay healthy, but two, it's just like having those guys for when situations arise. You can put them in there. They can fill the gap and you can still have an impactful team week in and week out. So depth, important. Can you go through 5 teams that really have stood out to you that have really helped build up their rosters from what they had last year, adding on to that, subtracting from that a little bit, and really who the deepest teams are in the NFL right now?
Yeah, this was actually a bit of a difficult one to do, Ben, because there are a bunch of teams out there that I like their rosters. I see some depth. I see some of those young guys who are going into year 2 that I think could elevate and really help out the team. But let's go through 5. Maybe I'll mention my other teams there on the back end that didn't make the list over here. But number 1, I think they've been on top of this list the last couple of years. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. And I mean, let's just be real. Like, they did lose some players here this offseason, losing Josh Sweat, losing Milton Williams, losing Mekhi Becton. Like, it hurts, but they were prepared for all of it. Like, they knew it was coming, and they also knew that they have guys on the roster who could come in and help out with those players leaving. I look at a player like a Jalix Hunt, their former 3rd-round pick last year. He's somebody who had a good rookie year. He's going to have an elevated role now that Josh Sweat is no longer there. I love the Azeez Ojari signing from the Giants this offseason. He had a bunch of sacks in New York, now joins this defensive line with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Nolan Smith and all those guys. Like, that is going to be a player who could have a really big year on this 1-year deal and then eventually cash out next offseason in free agency once again. Really, whenever I look at Philadelphia, they are very deep across the board. The linebacker room, obviously, you're going to get Nakobe Dean back. You drafted Jahad Campbell, Zach Bond. They just re-signed him this offseason on a very, very big contract. And I'm kind of all in on this youth movement in the secondary where Darius Slay is gone, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is gone, but you're going to go with Kenyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown, their 2nd-round pick out of Texas, Andrew Mukuba, who they really love his versatility. Like, overall, I kind of like where the roster is. We know about the offense. Basically, most of it is in place. They'll replace Mekhi Becton, likely with Tyler Steen, their former day 2 pick in the draft. So I like where they are. The really only big concern for me in Philadelphia, frankly, is the last time they were in a Super Bowl and they lost that one to Kansas City. We saw them lose their coordinators with Steichen and Gannon, and they replaced both guys in-house, and we know how that went. This year, of course, they still have Vic Fangio, but they did lose Kellen Moore, and they stayed in-house again, going with Kevin Patullo, who is a very, very bright mind, but he's never done this at the NFL level. So they're going to go with somebody in-house again, and you're just hopeful that he's going to be the one calling the play, just like Kellen Moore did. Nick Sirianni is going to be the head coach who's going to be on both sides and just being the guy on the sidelines who's motivating and all that. And he's still a very big part of game planning. But officially, calling plays belongs to Patullo. I think that change is the biggest one that Philadelphia had this offseason. And how that goes is going to be the most interesting thing. But the good thing for Patullo, of course, is he does have Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And, of course, that offensive line, there's still a bit of a question mark there with Dallas Goedert, who has been on the trade block. If you listen to some Eagles press conferences out there, they are very, very high on the other tight ends on the roster, including Grant Calacara. So there are guys on that team who they're ready to replace Dallas Goedert with, who, again, he's in the final year of his contract. He needs a new contract. They've been open to trading him. They've had calls to other teams. They spoke to the Colts, for example, of course, drafted Tyler Warren to reunite him with Shane Steichen. If they didn't draft Tyler Warren, or if he wasn't there on the board, I think that was a possibility, but obviously that no longer is a possibility there. So we'll see what happens to Goddard, but overall, this Eagles roster, the way it is every single year, it's very deep and they have depth all over the place.
Would you say that the roster currently is deeper than what it was during the Super Bowl?
No, I think they definitely took a bit of a step back in terms of talent because, again, it's a bit similar to that year where they lost the Super Bowl, where they had a bunch of guys leaving for agency back then as well, and they were prepared for it. I mean, I think that year was the Javon Hargrave year. He went to San Francisco. There are a bunch of other guys who left. It's not coming to my mind right now, but they took a bit of a step back, and yet they started that year, if we all remember, 10-1, and then, of course, had the big collapse where they lost 6-7 straight games to end the year. So they still have a lot of talent on this roster, but they did lose a bunch of pieces. That is the reality of it. I mean, Darius Slay, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Mekhi Becton, like all these guys were starters last year, but they knew that over the course of the regular season and postseason last year. Howie Roseman knew that this was going to happen, but he is somebody who plans ahead, and he had guys on this roster who he knew were going to step up as soon as those guys leave in free agency, and he was prepared to get 4 compensatory picks coming up next year because all those guys left. So they believe they have the guys on the roster who are ready to take off the next step. Brandon Graham retiring also is a pretty big deal. We should mention that as well. But at the same time, they've been ready for all this, but it's more of, are those guys going to step up? And my answer is they will. And the core of the players, the guys who were really a big deal, especially on the offensive side last year, those guys are all still there.
All right, let's go to the second team on your list. Also, quick reminder, and quick shout out to our friends over at Our Lads. That's who we're using today to show you guys some of the depth chart stuff. It's a really useful tool to be able to just get an idea as far as like who the guys are potentially going to be starting and the guys following up. So with that being said, who's the second team in your list?
I'm going to go with a team that was the number 1 seed in the NFC last year, and that is the Detroit Lions. Now, many people forgot, but they won 15 games last year with a never-ending list of injuries. I mean, just off the top of my head, Aiden Hutchinson was gone, Ali McNeil was gone, Marcus Davenport, Derek Barnes, Malcolm Rodriguez, I believe Carlton Davis, who left in free agency, he missed the rest of the year with a jaw injury. Their second-round rookie, Ennis Rakestraw, I'm looking at this list over here, he missed most of the year last season. All these guys are going to come back. Carlton Davis has gone, but they replaced him in free agency with a different big price cornerback in DJ Reed. So you get all those guys back, and if you're able to win 15 games with all those guys not there, I think this team could be really, really scary with all those guys coming back over here this offseason. The really big concern over here in Detroit, it's not the roster, it's not the depth, it's the reality that they lost their offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson and the defensive coordinator in Aaron Glenn. And it's more of, how are you going to be able to adjust with both those guys gone? John Morton, who used to be on the staff, is the new offensive coordinator. I think he's a really, really good mind. He was the offensive coordinator with the Jets years ago when the roster was just not good at all, and he got the most out of those players. Dan Campbell has a lot of respect for him. Is he Ben Johnson? Probably not, but that is somebody who they're going to rely on a lot. And then, of course, Kelvin Shepard, the former linebacker in the NFL, linebackers coach last year, he's going to take over as defensive coordinator. And I'll just say this, I was at the Senior Bowl 3-4 years ago when the Lions coaching staff was coaching it. Kelvin Shepard is one of the most he's basically a coach who is a player. That's kind of what the Lions staff has become with all the guys they have there. But he was so energetic. The players loved him. And it felt like everybody was giving him the fist bumps and jumping up with him. Like he gave me like the Robert Saleh vibes when he was in San Francisco as their defensive coordinator before becoming the Jets head coach. So I like him a lot. He's clearly really liked in that building as well. And now he takes over for Aaron Glenn. But overall, the roster getting all those guys back, and of course, having this team where, I mean, you show the roster before, there's from top to bottom throughout this roster. This is a team that has good players throughout. The offensive line is is still intact. Jared Goff still there. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick. We mentioned the name Isaac Tesla, who they traded up in the third round by giving up 3 third-round picks. Clearly, they have something there they really like about him. Sam Laporte is still there. The entire team is still intact. And now you get all these players on the defensive side back from injury. And even drafting a guy in the first round in Tyreek Williams, who I don't think many people had as a first-round pick. He was the best run stuffer in this draft. And now you have him there with McNeil coming back from his injury, DJ Reader, and of course now him as well, Tyreek Williams. That is a really, really good rotation there on the defensive line. I would love for them to add one more pass rusher. They traded for Zadarius Smith last year. He is still a free agent. They're leaving that door open. Right now, their second pass rusher is probably Marcus Davenport, who, let's be real about it, he's been injury prone throughout his career. So I would love for them to add one more guy there. But throughout this roster, it is very, very deep on all levels of here. As long as they stay healthy, this is a team that once again should be right there in the NFC and potentially the number 1 seed once again.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the third team. Who you got?
Yeah, let's show some AFC love over here, and it's going to be your team, Ben. The Baltimore Ravens are the third team on this list. And yeah, this is another team that I feel like year in and year out, like they have a really, really good roster. Last year, there were some holes there on the defensive side. We saw them give up a bunch of big plays, especially early on in the year. Eventually, they moved Kyle Hamilton back to where he belongs there in the secondary, and things kind of settled in. But I loved their first round pick with Malachi Starks and adding him with Kyle Hamilton. We know that defense, they love using their safeties, especially as chess pieces, really confusing quarterbacks and offenses from play to play. That is something now where you have Malachi Starks and Kyle Hamilton, both players who are super versatile. That is something where I think is going to be a very, very big deal for this Baltimore Ravens team. Overall, on offense, I mean, you look at what they have, it's still pretty much the same group for the most part. Obviously, Lamar and Derrick Henry. Zay Flowers, they're hoping he takes another step forward this year as he enters year number 3. Rashad Bateman had a pretty decent year last year. They're relying on him as wide receiver number 2. The DeAndre Hopkins signing, I think, is a very intriguing one because throughout his career, he's been a wide receiver 1. Last year in Kansas City, it was kind of used a little bit as wide receiver 2. Eventually, he was diminished even more than that. Now you're telling him, like, hey, DeAndre, come here. You're not a number 1 option, not a number 2 option, not even a number 3 option. We have Derrick Henry. We have the Lamar Jackson running element. Like, just having him on the field for 25, 30 plays, I think he's somebody who could have an impact for this team. We're still waiting for word on Mark Andrews, what his future is. Similar to Dallas Goedert, I think they're going to end up keeping him if they're able to figure out a restructured contract. But to this point, they have not reached an agreement. They really love Isaiah Likely, who is extension eligible right now. We'll see if they extend them. I could see Likely just playing it out and trying to have a big year. The offensive line, it's very young. I do wonder about the offensive line, just consistency. They really came together as the year went on last year, but I still feel like they're missing that one more guy who could be the veteran presence maybe. They did sign Joseph Noteboom last week, or earlier this week, I should say, to be potentially a swing tackle for this team. But as long as they're able to stay healthy, I think they're really confident in this young group staying together and taking that next step forward over here this year. The other thing I'll just mention about the Ravens, especially with their GM Eric DaCosta, every single year that they have this history of adding a player, whether it's late in May, late in June, late in July, it's in August, whatever it is, they find the player. I remember those days of when they signed Kyle Van Noy like in October, and they signed Jadeveon Clowney in August, and those guys had double-digit sacks for them. Like, they find a way to do this every single year. So there's going to be another addition over here at some point. There's still a lot of really good potential free agents who are out there. They're going to sign somebody at some point over here who's going to have an impact for this team at some point this year. But overall, I really like where they are. The pass rush unit also got better. We forgot to mention Mike Green, who they drafted in the second round. First round pick, if not for the off the field stuff. They believe all that off the field stuff is in the past and he's going to grow in their environment. If that's the case, they got a steal in the 50s for a pass rusher there who will join Kyle Van Noy and Odafe Owe and David Ajabo, who are all in the final years of their contract. So I like where Baltimore is as well from a roster standpoint going into 2025. And again, you know this, Ben, they're going to add somebody else at some point over here.
It's always the best part of it. Defensive Player of the Year candidate, Kyle Hamilton. Book it right now. All right. Number 4. Who you got?
We're going to go back to the NFC over here. And this one, I don't know if it surprises people or not, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are my number 4 pick over here. I mean, they just drafting Emeka Egbuka tells you where they are from a roster standpoint. Like they were like, hey, we're going to take best player available here. We're not going to reach for a need. And we kind of feel like our roster is in a bit of a good spot. And I mean, we're just going to go through this roster here. You have it on the screen. Baker Mayfield has turned into a Pro Bowl quarterback in the NFL. He has found his home in Tampa Bay. I mean, you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka. You have Jalen McMillan as well in the receiver group. Cade Otton, a super underrated tight end. The offensive line, the way they fixed this up once again, I mean, they're bringing back the same 5 starters, but I feel like most of these guys, people don't even know that they exist, aside from Tristan Wirfs, who is an all-pro left tackle. Ben Bredesen, Graham Barton, their first-round pick last year, was probably the safest pick in the first round. He was basically playing like a Pro Bowl center last year. Cody Mock, their former second-round pick on the offensive line, and Luke Gedeke, another guy who was their former second-round pick. They have crushed it when it comes to drafting these guys up front, and it's a big reason why they've had so much success. And, of course, Bucky Irving, their fourth-round pick last year, he's going to go into this year as their starting running back, over 1,000 rushing yards last year. This offense is stacked and loaded. And then you go on the defensive side, they are basically stacked as well. The Hassan Reddick signing, they need another pass rusher. 1 year, $14 million. They believe they're going to get the Hassan Reddick who was in Philadelphia, not the Hassan Reddick who had so many distractions last year, contract situation, no OTAs, no training camp, missed the start of the year, new system, new everything, was a mess. They believe they're getting a guy who is motivated, who's going to be in this Todd Bowles system, and is going to join a defensive line that has Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey. Greg Gaines is somebody that they really like in the interior of the defensive line as well as a rotational piece. And Logan Hall, their former, I believe it was end of first round or early second round pick for them. They believe he's going to be able to take that next step over here this upcoming season. Yaya Diaby, another one of their great draft picks. He has been every single year moving forward, continuing to get better and better. So you just love the way this roster has come together, and they have been one of the very best drafting teams in the NFL. That once again, you look at their draft this year, you could look at some of the guys they drafted, whether it's in round 3, round 4, round 5. I guarantee you some of those guys are going to be making an impact this year, because the Bucs and that staff, from Jason Light to Rob McCartney to Mike Greenberg and all the guys in that front office, they are some of the best people when it comes to finding players. Last year, on their 53-man roster, over 80% of it was homegrown players. So they have found a way to be really good at drafting, having these guys in there, and having good character guys as well, and basically having a really, really deep roster with good depth. And they've won the NFC South 4 straight years. They hate the fact that, I mean, they kind of hate it and also like it, and no one talks about them year in and year out. Last year, everyone was talking about the Atlanta Falcons and Kirk Cousins coming in. They still won the division. When Tom Brady left, they got Baker Mayfield. Everyone thought they fell off the face of the map. They're still right here. So this team is loaded. They're stacked. They know how to draft. They have a good roster. They have a deep roster, and they're going to be right there once again there in the NFC South, and it'll be a surprise to me if anybody else wins it.
And then there was one. Who's the final team that you have on your list of the 5 deepest teams in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, this one might surprise some people. And this does not mean, I mean, before I say it, does not mean that I think this team is going to win their division or whatever it is. But I think this is a team that is very deep and could make some noise in their division and in the conference. And it's going to depend on a few things. But my 5th team of the year is the Denver Broncos. I love where the Denver Broncos are at going into this year. We all saw what Bo Nix did last year as a rookie. I mean, you hope he takes that second-year leap the way we've seen many other quarterbacks have that second-year leap, whether it was, you know, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts. A lot of these quarterbacks took that big second-year leap. You hope he has that one as well. Look at the entire roster from top to bottom. Let's just start on the offensive side over here quickly. I mean, you go with, first of all, their running back that they drafted there, RJ Harvey. I mean, I believe Sean Payton knows how to find running backs. I think he liked whether it was Hampton or Henderson, they probably would have taken him in the first round if not for Jahdae Barron falling. But they had a long list of guys they liked, and I wish we could play the clip over here. But Sean Payton talking about RJ Harvey after they drafted him, he has a real plan for him. And there's a reason why they have not added any other veteran running backs throughout this offseason. They're going to give this guy a real chance of being their starting running back. But after that, I mean, Cortland Sutton obviously had a great year last year in his first year with Bo Nix, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. He needs a new contract. They're going to start working on that very, very soon. Tight end, Evan Ingram. I love that addition. He's one of the best receiving tight ends in football. Will become somebody who could line up really all over the formation there in Denver. And the offensive line, I have some concerns with center, but the rest of the offensive line, they've invested so much money at it with Garrett Bowles, Ben Powers, Quinn Miners, and Mike McGlinchey. They have a really, really good offensive line. So the center position, a little bit concerning there with Luke Wattenberg, who started last year, a little bit shaky there. We'll see if he ends up being the starting center going into this year. But the place that I really love it with Denver is the defense. I mean, we spoke about it as soon as they drafted Jahdae Barron. But you look at this team from top to bottom with Vance Joseph calling the plays. This defense on every single part of the defense is stacked. You go with Nick Bonito, Zach Allen, DJ Jones, and John Franklin Myers coming there on the defensive line. Your linebackers, Dre Greenlaw, Alex Singleton, Jonathan Cooper. Your cornerbacks, Defensive Player of the Year, Patrick Surtain, Jahdae Barron, who they drafted, Riley Moss as well. You could use him. And then safeties, Talanoa Hufanga and Brandon Jones. This defense from top to bottom is going to be a very, very difficult defense to go up against. They were difficult last year. I mean, they were really good last year. Outstanding. We had Zach Allen here on the show about a month ago talking about just how week after week they got better and better in the defensive line. They felt it during training camp they were going to be good, and then they really felt it as the year went on. We saw what the secondary did with Patrick Surtain. Now you bring in Jahdae Barron, who was one of my favorite players in this draft. They said it. They were surprised he was there at number 20. You could play him really outside, inside. You can move him at safety as well. Like, he could do many different things for that defense and Vance Joseph. And then the two things they really wanted to address this offseason was linebacker and safety. They get Dre Greenlaw to come over. I know there was a report about an injury. It is not something that is long-term. They believe he will be fine. And Talanoa Hufanga, who was an All-Pro a couple of years ago, there is some injury concerns there, but when he's healthy, he is one of the better safeties in the NFL. So this defense is going to be very, very difficult to go up against this year. So the offense should take a step up. The defense should take a step up. Their special teams as well is a really good special teams as well. So I like where the Denver Broncos are at. I think the AFC West is going to be one of the more fun divisions in football this year. It's still the Chiefs division. They're the teams to beat over here, but the Chargers got better. The Raiders got better. The Broncos got better. This is going to be a very fun division. And this defense, we always talk about this being an offensive league and it's a passing league and all of that. This defense has the potential to be the best defense in football this year in my mind. And I like where the Broncos are from top to bottom. Coaching staff as well. I love Sean Payton. I love Vance Joseph. Their quarterbacks coach, Davis Webb, is one of the brightest minds in football in my mind. Future OC, future head coach in this league. There's a lot to like over here in Denver, and they're my fifth and final team on this list.
It will never not be weird having people say, well, Davis Webb, their quarterback coach, and then just being like, whoa, Davis Webb's already a coach. It's been a couple of years now, and it still feels like it's not right that this guy is so young. But
we've been trying to get him here on the show because he is that bright. And just the story behind it, I think I mentioned here before, but the way Davis Webb got that job is a really, really funny one because he wanted to retire from playing. He played for the Giants in the final year there. And he was like, listen, I've always wanted to be a coach. I'm going to start taking some interviews. He hired an agent. And basically his first interview was in Denver with Sean Payton. Now, Sean had no plans to hire this guy. He was like, you know what? Let me just interview this guy, see what he's about. Blew him away. And he was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm hiring you as my quarterbacks coach. No familiarity with you. Russell Wilson was the quarterback back then. Russell Wilson is older
he was older than him by a few years.
And he was like, yeah, you're going to be the quarterbacks coach for Russell Wilson. So it just shows how bright he is. And yeah, he's going to be an OC in this league eventually. And I do believe a future head coach eventually as well.
we would love to have him on NFL Spotlight. We'll have to see if we can reach out to the Broncos again, see
Well,
what their
let's just
availability.
say what it is. They're hiding him, Ben. They don't want people to know.
So I wasn't gonna say it, but that's a real conversation that people behind the scenes will. This is a little peek behind the curtain here while we're telling you guys to subscribe and tell us who you want as the guests. We have a hard time sometimes trying to get some of the coaches, some of the front office people, because these teams they like to hide their guys away because if too many people start hearing about them, you start having teams giving calls and saying, "Hey, what's their availability for a promotion?"
If you the amount of coaches and executives I text with about coming on the show, and they're like, just please get the PR people to approve, and it's like I can't. It's difficult, but it is what it is. That's the reason why we get more players than coaches and executives on here.
Which we
But
love.
it's going to
Don't get me
change.
wrong. We
It's
love
going
our
to change.
players.
We love our players. We love our players, but we also want to get those coaches and executives. And there's a lot of guys who are deserving, but these teams know that they are deserving, and they want to keep
And
them.
that's no hate against the teams by any means, because
It's not. It's not.
we've had the opportunity to have a lot of great people on from within the organizations beyond the players, and it makes 100% sense why they don't
That's
necessarily want to shop them around to the media people and keep it on the down low until they have an opportunity to put them into the spotlight within their own team.
Well,
Transition.
if they're not gonna be on this show, I mean, we're gonna mention their names here, like we just did with Davis Webb. So there it is. But that will do it here for our Wednesday, May 7th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. A fun little exercise here on the show today. We're gonna do more of these throughout the rest of the offseason. Whenever it's a bit quiet, we're gonna have some more. Not necessarily spotlight guests for the other days. We're gonna have maybe media people join us as well who cover these teams to talk about it as well here in the near future on those days that are not Tuesdays. But like we said yesterday, if you have any spotlight guests you think deserve to be here on the show, leave a comment, tweet me, DM Ben at Ben Allen Sports. We're going to take a look and try to get those guys here on the show on those Tuesdays moving forward. We will see all of you here tomorrow morning.